there is one crucial aspect. So we generally talk about, I was thinking of the server controls and other components, and then I was thinking of the overall architecture that IoT has today. How does the attack surface look like? But when I was thinking of it in the current day context, things suddenly changed for me, because like you were saying, right, when you look at IoT devices, it's very different from other kind of software. Because think of it, an IoT device is either on your hands, like for example as a watch, basically having your maybe blood pressure, your in case of manufacturing, can be temperature and pressure of some places, which is highly sensitive information based on which a lot of critical decisions are being taken in the entire IoT ecosystem. So it may have even data like not just your BP and your blood sugar, but also the nights you did not sleep, and a lot of different patterns, health patterns which are there. In actual healthcare, it can have way more sensitive information, right? And stents also these days, you will have these devices. In SCADA systems and in so many other kind of ecosystems, you have this, of course, in cars and all of that. And in every places, including places like home automation, right? When you have these, any information that is essentially going through these devices or using these devices is highly sensitive, especially from a personal perspective, but also depending on the system and manufacturing, it can be from a different perspective, but it is sensitive by default. So when we think of software, a chatting software or some other kind of software, we could be dealing with a lot of static information, but only in case of IoT, for sure, you will be dealing with something which is sensitive and helps in some kind of decision making down the line. And this kind of sensitive information is not just from a data security perspective, but from a privacy perspective also plays a major role. So from that perspective, how do we go about ensuring the secure transmission, but also storage to prevent, because in this case, if you have unauthorized access to this kind of data, that can be damaging to a big degree. There can be real-time impact, like we were just touching upon initially. So how do you look at privacy? There is data security, but privacy, I thought, was a little more challenging to do from an organizational perspective. What is your take on that?
So essentially, I think for us, and I believe many other companies, privacy has always been part of our security assessments. So we look at when the data is stored, what information is stored, and if it's not encrypted, is can there be any impact of if this data is stolen? Does it have personal data and so on and so forth? So, but and this is not just since you mentioned some of the devices. Uh, let's say tomorrow your there is a connected device you use in your home for whatever purpose, a small device, maybe $20, $50 device, and you've been using it for 2 years, doesn't work anymore. What do? You throw it in the dustbin, right? Yeah. So do you know how much information that device still has on you? And the simplest and the most, I would call, yeah, the simplest information and the easiest to and one which has the most impact are your Wi-Fi credentials. They're still on the
Of
device,
course,
right?
yeah.
So and that's just that any device will have. Then based on the use case, it will have different data on it. And for especially for startups, since there were no guidelines or standards, they can do anything, because when it comes to hardware, everyone trusted hardware, right? When there was a boom in oh, hardware is so cheap, we have Raspberry Pi, we have Arduino, we have this, let's make prototypes, right? And then once they make prototypes, let's make the product with this only.
Right.
And then they'll go ahead and sell it. And if there is some customer who pokes around and finds, he will publish it, and then they will go about thinking of how do you go about securing it. So one of the things that at least enterprises started doing was pushing the same standards, right? Because for them, it's a black box, right? They cannot peek in the hardware. So if I'm a European company, you comply with GDPR, right? And so that solved at least part of the problem, where they are still at least regulated from an existing standard perspective. So even if now they're doing privacy, they don't have to. They're not doing only on the cloud or the mobile, but they have to do at the device as well.